Hey guys, and welcome to the fourth lesson in our Introduction to Pandas series. So in the previous lesson, we learned about all the different methods and techniques to get data from and into a Pandas data object. We managed to upload external data sources into our Pandas DataFrame and Series objects. So the next natural step after you have your dataset in a Pandas data frame is to start exploring this data. So in this lesson, we will learn about all the different commands, functions, and procedures you can use in order to describe the information in your data frame. We will also learn about all the different built-in data types supported by the Pandas library. So let us quickly move to lesson number 4. Once you have your data uploaded into a Pandas data frame, data professionals usually have some typical questions that they need to answer about their data. For example, they want to know the size of their dataset, what are the different data types they have, is there any missing values they need to deal with, and some basic summary statistics. All this investigation is really needed to identify what kind of data preparation they need to do in order to make the dataset ready for further analysis. So let us start to import the dataset that we have online. This dataset is about alcohol consumption. And we already learned before about the use of the head function to display some of the top records in our dataset. Okay, so we have this dataset and we are displaying the top 5 records in this dataset. A very natural question you may have when working with a new dataset is to ask what is the size of this dataset. For example, you want to know how many rows and columns do you have in this data frame. So to answer this question, we can use the shape attribute, which is a built-in attribute that can help you to answer this question. It will give you a Python tuple where the first value represents the number of records or rows, and the second value represents the number of columns. So let's try to write a code to use the shape on our alcohol dataset. The result number tells us that we have 193 records in 5 different columns. But it doesn't tell us other useful information such as the number of these columns and their data types. Another commonly used attribute is the size attribute, which usually tells us how many elements or how many cells are there in our dataset. So let's also apply that. And we can see here that we have 965 cells in our data frame. So this comes from basically multiplying the number of records, which is 193, times the number of columns, 5, and you will get the 965. But keep in mind, this number represents all the cells, so everything, with and without missing values. And also you can use this attribute to display how many cells are there in a specific column or feature in our dataset. So let's say we want to know how many elements are there in the country name column. And we see we have 193 elements or cells in our country name column. Both the commands shape and size give us basic information about the dimension of our data frame. Let's now try to get more details about our data frame. One of the most useful commands that you can use is the info attribute, which is another attribute that you can apply on a data frame, but will give you much more information about your dataset. So let's try to do that. And we can see here they gave us a lot of useful information. We notice the info attribute first gave us the number of entries or number of records that are there available in our dataset, which are basically 193. And this is the number that is consistent with what the shape command told us. It also tells us the range index value, which is a numerical range value that the Pandas library will automatically assign to each record. We haven't actually learned a lot about these index values yet, but later in this course we will use these numerical range values to actually slice and dice our data. Next, it also tells us about the number of columns, and it seems that we have 5 different columns in our dataset. And then there is this nice table showing us different column details. So we have the column number, column names such as the country name, the beer serving, total liters, and also there is some information about the number of not null or missing values. So these are the number of cells that actually have values, and you can use this number to actually tell whether you have some missing values in your data frame or not, and what is the size of these missing values. In this particular data frame, it seems that all columns have values, so there are no missing values. And we can see that because we have 193 records and none of them have any null values. Finally, it shows the column data type, and there are several data types that Pandas library support. Some of them are text, some are numerical, and some are date values. And it's usually very important to have the correct data type for each column in your data frame. Again, later in this course, we will learn about the different data types and how we can actually update or change them. Finally, there are some details about how many columns in each data type. So there is the data type float, integer, and object, and then the memory size, like how much memory is needed to upload this data frame. So we see how the info attribute actually gave us a lot of useful information about each column in our dataset. Now let's move to a more advanced exploratory analysis, and specifically we talk about the attribute describe. The describe attribute gives us statistical summary about our dataset. For example, we notice there are some numerical columns in our dataset. And this attribute would tell us some statistical information about these columns. You can see here the function was applied to all the numerical columns, such as the beer serving and spirit serving and the wine serving, and also the total liter of alcohol served, and generated some standard statistical numbers, like the count, or basically the number of cells that are available in each column, the mean and the standard deviation, the minimum and maximum values, and the different percentile values for each column. This summary statistic can be very useful if you want to quickly have a high-level understanding about your dataset, which is typically a very standard exploratory analysis process. So this summary was mainly for the numerical values in your dataset, but we can also have non-numerical columns such as free text and categories. Maybe you want to know the number of unique feature values and how many different values are there. So let's try to apply that, and to do that we will make use of our countries dataset. And let's display it to have the feel about this dataset. We can see this dataset has a lot of columns. So let's apply the unique function on the column called region name. Okay, so the result tells us that there are actually only this small list of unique values in the column region name. So we have the Americas, Oceania, Africa, Europe, Asia, and none, which means basically there are some null or missing values in this dataset. Now, if we want to know how many unique values for each one of these regions, we can apply another Pandas function called value counts. Cool, and that one will give us how many different values are there for each one of these unique region names. So in this lesson we learned about some quick commands that help you to investigate your dataset, like finding the size of your data frame and descriptive information about each column, the number of missing values, high-level statistical values, the number of unique values, and so on. Now that we know how to find all this basic information, let's try to understand the different data types that are supported by the Pandas library. So the Pandas library can support 7 different data types, and it's really important for a data professional to understand the usability of each data type. And they should also be able to convert any data frame column from one data type to another depending on the analysis needs. So the Pandas library provides a very rich number of functions that will help you to actually do this conversion. This link will give you a list of the different ways to convert a Pandas data type from one type to another. Later in this course, we will see a lot of these examples to convert Pandas column data types. But for now, this small table will give you some information about each Pandas data type. So in the last lesson, we will learn how to perform some common data cleaning tasks. So please stay tuned